Good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining us for this first dashboard webinar of 2022. This is something we plan to repeat for a number of different topics throughout the year. That'll include a mix of dashboards as well as some of the data-driven research projects that we're working on at Maiden. But for today, we're going to be focusing on the IAPT MDM v2.0 workbooks. I'll start with a brief introduction of where you can find the dashboards in iaptus. Then we'll focus on the IAPT MDM workbooks, their purpose and where the calculations and definitions come from. Then we'll spend the majority of the time looking through what's changed with the v2.0 dataset, what this has meant in terms of changes to the dashboards, and we'll tackle some of the most frequently asked questions that we receive in support logs. We'll also touch on the small-scale changes that you can expect to see in these workbooks, with v2.1 coming in April, before wrapping up with some important dates and ways to keep in touch with us. Please note that any data shown here today is dummy data. So starting with where to find dashboards in iaptus. This will be common knowledge to a lot of you, but for those of you who are perhaps new to your role or less familiar with this aspect of iaptus reporting, here's a quick run through. Firstly, go to the header at the top of the page and you'll find a button for reports. Click on reports and there you'll find two tabs available, Hypercube and dashboards. If you don't see the dashboards tab, please contact your super user and request permission. You are probably familiar with the Hypercube reports. These report on real-time information held in iaptus and provide tabular outputs. It's easy to apply numerous different filters and groupings to the figures. The dashboard reports are based on data which has been processed or ETL'd overnight, so we're only picking out fields that we need for our analysis and reporting. This means that the data is only up to date as of the last time it was refreshed. However, there are some advantages to using dashboards over Hypercube. A number of national calculations are built into the data. Other useful sources of data is added in, like deprivation scores and population, and the information is displayed in charts rather than tables, so it's easier to spot trends and outliers. Today, we're just talking about what's in the dashboards tab. When you click on the tab, you won't necessarily see the same set of workbooks in this list as another service. There is a set of basic workbooks covering activity at patient referral and discharge and contact level. There are also workbooks that are focused around iaptus features, for example, online appointment booking, SMS, and web forms. These are generally available to you if your service has those features switched on. On the national reporting side, CYP services have some workbooks which aren't applicable to adult services, and the adult services have some that aren't applicable to CYP, such as the IAPT MDM workbooks that we're discussing today. When you click from a workbook on the list, you'll then see the cover page. So the purpose of the IAPT MDM dashboards. There is a set of national reports put together by NHS Digital from the submissions called the monthly data measures and can be found on the NHS Digital website. In iaptus, we attempt to replicate these reports as closely as possible using iaptus data. By doing this, you'll be able to get a current picture of each measure rather than a few months behind. You'll also be able to drill down to the particular patient, referral or contact that formed part of a measure, should you need to. There are two documents that we use on a daily basis in our team, the IAPT Technical Output Specification v2.0 and 2.1 and the IAPT v2.0 metadata document. The IAPT Technical Specification identifies the fields to be collected as part of the minimum dataset, MDS, and has a number of derivations or calculations based on those MDS fields. These are part of our overnight ETL process, so all the most commonly used calculations are part of your back-end data. The IAPT metadata document provides a breakdown of all the measures and how to calculate them using the fields and derivations defined in the spec. The document is regularly updated, and we check the website for a new release each month and start working on any changes as soon as they're available. This is a screenshot of what's included in the metadata document. The measure type on the left can be core, EA and LTC. You can also see the measure reference number, the measure name and description. These are fields useful to cross-reference with certain dashboards in the MDM workbooks, as you'll see in a moment. As there are very specific calculations and so many measures, we have limited these workbooks so that they serve this purpose of reporting these measures and this purpose alone. The only additions are the minimum filters that we know that clients use to limit data to send to NHS Digital in their submissions. What's changed with IAPT v2 and soon with v2.1? In v1.5, we provided a single IAPT MDM workbook with 32 dashboards covering the 176 monthly data measures. With the implementation of v2, the calculations in the old workbook are now obsolete. We are no longer maintaining this workbook, and it should not be used for replicating national reporting. Instead, we have introduced new IAPT MDM v2.0 workbooks. There are a great many more measures and therefore more dashboards. It became impractical to keep them all in one workbook, so we split them into 4 using the measure types in the metadata document, core, EA and LTC. As core was still a very hefty workbook, we split it into 2, core and core ADSM and recovery. We don't have time today to go through each of the workbooks in great detail, but instead we will walk through one example, a dashboard from the IAPT MDM v2.0 core workbook, and highlight each of the main features. We start with the cover page for the workbook. Older workbooks have a different style and feel to this, but gradually they will all be updated. This new template was introduced to accommodate a lot of the new features we've been adding and will continue to add this year. In particular, the increased number of filters, the introduction of help guides, and more interactive features. Typically, the cover page has a title and a purpose of the workbook. Above the title, there may on occasion be some orange text, which we use to highlight information to you, like this is a beta workbook, or this workbook is missing certain data that we want to make you aware of, or it's a workbook that's going to be removed at some point. Below the purpose, there is either one link to a status page, or if there aren't too many dashboards in the workbook, there is a list of dashboards, each with a navigation button. The status page provides a list of all the dashboards in the workbook and whether there are any issues with it. Rather than issues affecting the whole workbook, which will be highlighted on the cover, the status page holds information that affects a particular dashboard within the workbook. Here we can see that the sick pay dashboard has an exclamation mark indicating that NHS Digital have agreed to make a change to the calculation, and we have yet to implement this change in our calculations on this dashboard. We're going to have a look at a particular dashboard in more detail. Referrals that finished a course of treatment by number of days waited for first treatment. This dashboard shows the total number of referrals that ended in the period, 3,125, and we can see that 2,998, or 96% of those, waited less than 6 weeks to enter treatment from the top chart, and 3,122, or 100%, waited less than 18 weeks from the bottom chart. We were being asked to add more and more filters to the dashboard, and they were taking up an increasing amount of space. Our new template, we've now included the majority of filters under the Filters button, keeping only one line of the most useful visible at all times. In some workbooks, this list of filters can be quite lengthy, so we've grouped them together in columns based on the level of detail that they are applied to, i.e. patient level, referral level, contact level, etc. For some workbooks, there may also be additional items, such as targets, in here too. If you need to make changes to a number of filters, we would recommend that you pause refreshes using the button at the bottom, then apply your filters, and then resume the refreshing by clicking the button again. If you would like to see what filters have been applied, you can click on the I button, which will provide you with a summary. At the top right, there are some blue buttons. Here we have an information button, a demo button, and a help guide button. The information button tells you which filters have been applied to the data which you don't have any control over. Here we're looking at only IAPT data, those referrals that have completed treatment and ended in the period. The button will also tell you which measures from the IAPT metadata document are included in this dashboard, M052 to M055. This is the corresponding section in the metadata document. We have the measure number, the name, a description, which fields in the specification have been used in the construction and the actual construction. You will probably be familiar with a number of the fields used in the construction, for example, service discharge date or referral request received date, but some of these fields are calculations themselves, like completed treatment flag and therapy session first date. Please don't worry if you don't follow the details of the next slides, as we do all the calculations for you, but I will be showing you where we find the constructions in the technical spec. I've extracted the two derived fields we are using in our measures, completed treatment flag and therapy session first date. We can see that the UIDs and the field names match with the metadata document. The completed treatment flag will be true, or 1 in our back-end data, if the referral has been discharged and the treatment care contact count is greater than or equal to 2. This derivation uses another calculated field, treatment care contact count. The calculation for this field adds in the number of IT logs, which is yet another calculated field and shown at the bottom here, and the number of attended or unplanned treatment appointments, excluding employment support, which fell between the referral start and end date. With regards to the therapy session first date field, we need to look at two sets of data appended together. Data in the 201 care contact table, limited to records which fit certain criteria, 1 or 2 and 4 and 7 and 14, and these are defined on the complex derivations tab in the spec. Clause 1 and 2 specify that they must be attended or unplanned contacts. Clause 4 specifies that it must be a treatment contact. Clause 7 that the care activity associated with the contact is not employment support. And clause 14 that the contact date is between the referral start and end dates. Once we've got this subset of data, we then add the IT logs to this, filtering by clause 15 to logs starting between referral start and end date, and then order by date to identify the date of the first record, which will be our therapy session first date. Hopefully that will help you to understand how the figures on the dashboards are derived and where to find the information should you need to. If you would like to download the charts or figures behind the charts, use the download button on the bottom right of your screen. There are lots of new measures and changes in this version of the MDMs. There are some common questions we get on support logs, and we've highlighted a few examples here. Why can I no longer find the field that I'm looking for in the download data? There are a few reasons for this. Firstly, some of the fields referenced in IAPT v1.5 have either been renamed or removed as part of the v2 changes. We have changed our field names to match those provided in the technical specifications as closely as possible. There are occasionally some slight variations between the MHS dataset and the IAPT dataset, so we may have had to make some slight alterations. Using the example measures we've just been through, in V1.5 the completed treatment flag was called ICV15 completed treatment flag. The treatment contact count was IC count treatment appointments, and the therapy session first date was IC date first therapeutic session. There are some fields which are no longer available because they are no longer required by the new dataset. We're gradually building many of these back into our new table structure, but if there is a field that would be particularly useful for your service and is not currently available, please raise a support log or add a post to iaptus Innovations. Why don't the figures on the V2 dashboards match those on the V1.5 dashboards? Well, there have been some changes in the calculations for various measures, including newly collected data items, which means that the figures cannot be directly compared between V2.0 and V1.5 dashboards. In the example we went through earlier, the biggest change was the fact that IET records from a new 205 Internet Therapy Log table are added into the treatment contact count figures and the therapy session first date. As there are specific rules around adding in these logs, any contacts associated with IET have been removed from the 201 care contact table, so there is no duplication. How do IET contacts affect the completed treatment calculation? IET logs are compiled into a separate table, the 205 Internet Therapy Log table, which summarises all IET activity on a weekly basis. From the date of the first IET contact, there will automatically be one entry in the 205 table for every week following that first contact. A referral is considered to be complete once it has 2 contacts and a discharge date, as we saw earlier. So if a referral has had an IET contact over a week ago, then it will automatically have 2 records in the 205 table and will meet the condition of having had 2 contacts regardless of whether there have been any attended or unplanned treatment care contacts. The changes from V2.0 to 2.1 are small in terms of changes required to the dashboards. We will be amending or adding to the back-end data of some calculations to reflect the changes, but we don't anticipate that there will be any new dashboards as a result of the implementation. This is a summary of some of the changes for V2.1, which we will be implementing in the coming months. You may notice in some new workbook deploys that we've already started incorporating some of these changes, for example, adding in the new gender fields to dimension lists. We will continue to keep you up to date on any dashboard changes in our usual emails. Moving on to the final section and some important dates we'd like to make you aware of. Firstly, the now obsolete IAPT MDM V1.5 workbook will be switched off in March, with an exact date to be communicated to you in advance in the usual way. Secondly, all updates for V2.1 will be in place in the dashboards by April in time for the first collections and submissions, although the actual dates for the first submission are of course subject to any changes NHS Digital might make. And finally, we'd like to make you aware that we are in the process of exploring excluding older historical data from our ETL processes and the dashboards. The main driver behind this change is to reduce the load times of dashboards. But we would like to stress that no firm date has been set and all services will retain the option to request all years of data. The load times of dashboards depends on a number of factors. Changes introduced by Tableau. We always keep up to date with the latest versions of Tableau for security reasons and to enable new features. Sometimes these updates can have a negative impact on load times. The breadth of back-end data. We regularly add new fields and calculations to cover new reporting requirements and respond to user requests. The number of filters. The more filters means slower dashboards, although we deployed an update in July 21 to improve the speed of MDM workbooks to 1/3 of the previous load times by duplicating filter fields in a number of back-end tables. The growing volume of historical data. We currently include all historical data since your records began with iaptus. This means that with each passing month, there is more data to process and each refresh of a dashboard takes a little bit longer. It is this last factor that we are currently looking into, the trade-off between the speed of dashboards and the amount of historical data that we make available. We will be exploring restricting the date range to only include open referrals and all referrals ended after a certain date, for example, the last 3 years. It is anticipated that this will greatly speed things up, but we will maintain an option for your service to opt for all years of data over faster dashboards. And finally, we are always keen to hear from you and to work with you to make sure the dashboards best suit the needs of you and your service. I assume that most of you have heard about today's webinar through the dashboard updates emails that David sends out, but if you don't receive these and would like to be added to our mailing list for all future iaptus updates, please let your account manager know and we'll make sure you receive them. If you spot a problem or have a query about something you see in any of our dashboards, please raise a support log and your account manager will make sure the questions reach the right person. And finally, for larger requests and ideas for future development, we encourage you to post your suggestion on our innovations platform, where you can vote on other people's suggestions. We monitor this regularly, and it really does help to move ideas further forward in our roadmap when we see lots of people sharing similar ideas.